Mo Gawdat. I spoke to you, I think about 4 years ago when you wrote a book about happiness. And I remember you came in and you'd written this book about AI, but I particularly wanted to speak about the subject of happiness because I was fascinated by it. What I find astonishing is the fact that you were talking about AI before anybody was really talking about AI. No guest that had ever come on my podcast had ever mentioned the subject of AI. It just wasn't interesting to the world. And then this thing called ChatGPT came out, and suddenly everybody got to feel it for themselves and became fascinated by it. My first question, and this might be a question for people that don't know you, is why at that time did you start talking about AI before anybody else?
I knew them in the lab. I joined Google in 2007, very late 2006. And at the time, most people don't know that at the time we had reasonably established AIs doing our back-end work. And 2008, we had the CAT paper, which was published 2009, the first real unprompted AI. I remember 2016, I had that incident where I was, observing a project we were funding that was about teaching grippers how to grip, unlike industrial machinery. So to be able to grip like a human needs a very high level of intelligence to assess the texture, the softness, the positioning, and so on, the shape of everything. And we were doing that, and it just blew my mind how similar to my kids they were. And I think that was my very first realization that we were building the apex of intelligence. We were genuinely handing over the reins of superintelligence to another being, right? And when you get faced with that, you start to suddenly realize something that we at Google found very difficult to realize, which was that everyone I knew at Google till then was believing that we were making the world a better place, and we were. We genuinely were doing amazing things for the world. But then suddenly there is a moment where you recognize that maybe the world will not use what you're making the way you want it to be used. And you can see that in lots of technologies. Social media starts by the claim that it's going to get us connected and get us closer, but eventually ends up separating us with that little screen. Dating apps are giving you the promise that you're going to find your soulmate, but in reality, they keep renewing month after month. And so tech somehow ends up being more capitalist than altruistic. And I think I wasn't the first. Nick Bostrom started, Jeffrey Hinton completely changed his mind. Fei-Fei Li is starting to say, this is very serious. Everyone who's ever had a very deep relationship with the machines is a bit concerned.
I wonder if there's a path that's hard to see now that ends in AI being net positive for humanity.
Sure. I bet 100% on that. It's that this path is very painful.
This path is very painful.
Yeah, so the example you need to understand is, we discovered nuclear power, and the very first implementation was a nuclear bomb, not nuclear energy, right? And I think that's exactly what's happening with AI. The first implementations of AI are in favor of a few at the expense of the majority. In favor of the capitalist to increase productivity and reduce costs, but not taking into account how that impacts on the general public. In favor of the armies that are now competing with autonomous weapons, in favor of the surveillance systems that are attempting to control everything with more and more and more intelligence and more monitoring. And that's not AI waking up in the morning and saying, hey, you know what, let's oppress all humans. But it is a powerful few that are simply deciding to use the ultimate superpower on the planet today to gain more power and more control. I mean, as we speak, we're living in two major wars where AI is doing most of the killing.
Because a lot of people think of AI as these like chatbots that we're all using to help us write.
No, I think there is a hype. I call it the hype dichotomy, if you want. So what the general public sees about AI is overhyped, but ineffective. All of the fake videos and all of the, Grok did this, and, we attempted to switch off that machine and it did that, and so on. what the real geeks see inside the lab is just unbelievable intelligence. And so what is about to happen is that we've started to put together systems that develop themselves. They look at their own code and they run experiments and they test those experiments if they changed something, and they see where the machines are, the performance is, and redeploy the best code. Okay, and if you just think of that, I want you to try and imagine a world where we have a tiny little genius sitting in the back end somewhere trying. But instead of trying a new code every day, it's trying a new code every microsecond. Eventually, sooner or later, they'll discover something, right? And I think that's what most people don't realize. What most people don't realize is how intelligence triggers intelligence. And if you really, really understand this, you realize that the hype on the normal human side is completely overrated, missing the main topics, and the silence inside the vault, if you want, of the geeks is quite alarming. No, not alarming in a bad way, but it's quite world-changing.
I think world-changing is a really interesting phrase, because I find that to be quite true, that the world is at the precipice of quite a significant change in many respects. It's funny, I almost swing backwards and forwards with my thoughts on AI. I guess one of the thoughts that hasn't swung is that there's going to be pretty tremendous job disruption. I would have logically believed it from reasoning up from, okay, intelligence increases, what is intelligence? And once intelligence is in the form of these agents, where on my phone right now I can tell my agent to do something, it uses the computer downstairs, it does it for me. When I first experienced that, I was like, wow, okay, so it can do anything that's on a computer. It can click around, it can do stuff for me. There's a lot of people that are paid in the world to click around on a computer. I'm probably one of them, to be honest. And then the other eureka moment was just in seeing how my own hiring had started to shift.
For sure. And
I started to notice that we were thinking about AI proficiency in our hiring a lot more. And that especially, I think the guys at Anthropic, which is one of the big AI companies, said that they could see, I think they said roughly 15% of entry-level jobs could now be done by AI. I think that's what they said. And that started to correlate with what I was observing. And this is when I thought, oh my gosh, yes, no, this is going to cause a lot of job disruption, especially at the entry level.
I think you're spot on with that. Not the blue collar, but the entry level knowledge work.
Yeah, and that became my first concern. I sat here with Dara, the CEO of Uber, and he was quite clear that the 9 million Uber riders won't have their jobs anymore. What's your take on this job disruption point?
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, your team gave me this lovely little pyramid, basically. If you think of the bottom layer as blue-collar jobs, right? More people doing manual work. On top of it, you'll have those, call them knowledge workers, mostly doing mundane jobs, like you said, clicking on a computer or responding to a phone call or whatever. Then you have the middle knowledge workers, jobs that require a bit more intelligence, anything from a paralegal to a financial analyst to all of that. And then, of course, top leadership. And most people think it's going to be starting from the bottom. I don't think it will start from the bottom. Actually, I think blue-collar jobs will stay for a very long time.
Give me an example of a blue-collar job for someone that's
a carpenter. Okay. I love to restore classic cars. So, there isn't a robot that can do that yet. Okay. This, however, anything that is call center agent, assistant, travel agent, anything that you can do with a few clicks and is mundane, is going to disappear very quickly. My prediction is you're going to start to see very serious impact in 2027. Now, what you had not sensed it before, because what we saw was no hiring in that segment. So that what you saw in the last couple of years is that companies were not hiring entry-level jobs anymore. It wasn't job losses yet, but that basically meant the workforce was not growing, right? The next layer, I think, would probably be the knowledge workers. As intelligence increases, a paralegal would probably not be needed because AI can do the research, or one paralegal can do the job of four, a financial analyst the same, and so on and so forth. But interestingly, it continues to go up, believe it or not. And I hosted Max Tedmark on my documentary, and he was laughing out loud, genuinely laughing out loud, saying, most of the CEOs believe that they can fire everyone and have AI do all of the jobs. They just don't remember that AGI is going to do everything better than humans eventually, including being a CEO.
So let's first define, when you say white collar, you said lawyers there. What kind of roles?
Everything. If you're a doctor that's doing diagnosis, you probably will have fewer doctors doing more diagnosis, because I think the NHS does that already by asking people to interact with an AI first. If you're a composer, a music composer, some composers will lose their jobs because of that. If you're an artist that's doing graphic design, some will lose their jobs because AI comes into that. And interestingly, even middle management. I told you offline about my startup. My CTO is an AI. My chief of staff is an AI. My project management is AIs. Again, because I'm a geek, I can do those things, but that interface will come to the normal people very soon, right? Mm-hmm. And so this may take 2 to 3, 5 years if you want, until 2030 if you're optimistic, but they'll start to erode. Okay, I think the challenge that most people don't understand is, as this erodes, we're already dealing with a very different economy. Okay, an economy that is spiraling a lot quicker and pushing for more cost reductions. Let me ask you this, if you don't mind, then we can come back to this. Imagine a world where the concept of labor arbitrage that built all of our capitalist success disappears.
What do you mean by labor arbitrage?
So capitalism has always been all about using labor and capital or debt to create things at a cost that is lower than the price you sell them for. Correct? That's it. You bring a team together, they make some shoes, whatever, and you sell the shoes for $1 more than how much it costs you to make them. So how would capitalism look like if you don't have labor arbitrage? If cost of labor drops to an investment in a machine that can do the job? Okay? How would capitalism and banking look if, because of that cost reduction, you don't need to borrow as much anymore? And more interestingly, how does the GDP look if all of those workers no longer have the purchasing power to buy the things that you can create, you and others, right? There is an interesting disruption that doesn't require us to get to 100% job displacement. At 10-20% job displacement, you're in a very different economy, and an economy that is clearly spiraling downwards, don't you think?
Yeah, I wonder with when costs drop, I think one of the things that might happen as well is that people will spend more on other things. Because I was thinking in my business, one of the observations I've had is if I make a cost saving, I end up spending the money on something else. Now that thing could be tokens, basically spending money on AI. But it also could be hiring in different areas.
Which are?
Software engineers are like hot property right now.
You have to imagine all of that intelligence is sooner or later going to be not replaced entirely in the first stages, but if the job of 4 assistants can be done by one, then the job of 4 paralegals can be done by one, then the job of a massive marketing team can be done by a smaller marketing team. It's not that jobs will end first, it's that productivity gains will make businesses not want to have as many people, costly humans, costly emotional humans, when the job can be predictably done for cheap.
And then what about this this bottom layer here? There was this video released by Figure AI the other day where they showed someone on a robot on the production line for 8 hours just sorting packages. Yeah. Did you see this video? At one point they showed a human sorting the packages alongside them, but the robot ended up winning out. And okay, this is a very straightforward task. All it's doing here is it's looking for where the label is on the package and making sure the label is facing downwards on all the packages. So it's looking, It's sorting the packages, putting the label facing down, and it did this for 8 days.
Yeah.
Intermittently, it would walk over and charge itself, and then it would come back to the production line.
Yeah.
But when I saw this as well, it was a glimpse of some of the disruption that's going to take place at the blue collar level as well. Because if you think about Elon Musk, he's got in his pay packet, he gets something like $1 trillion over the coming years if he produces and delivers at least 1 million humanoid robots into the world. But his prediction is there will be a time where there are 10 billion humanoid robots, where there are more humanoid robots in the world than humans.
For a fact. You see, the interesting, again, the difference between the overhype and the underhype. Huh? Most of the conversation is around humanoids. Nobody's talking about self-driving cars. And a self-driving car is a robot. It's a functional robot that doesn't look like humans, okay? The investment you have to put into humanoids is a little more to learn skills that allows that machine to fit into the world. But specialized robots are gonna do the job very, very quickly. And so you can easily see that the first wave, like you had the conversation with Uber CEO, is going to be specialized robots replacing drivers. It's going to be specialized robots, unfortunately, doing the killing. It's going to be specialized robots, unfortunately, doing all of the, intelligence work, law enforcement work. They don't have to look like a human. They don't have to behave like a human. As a matter of fact, the Boston Dynamics dog is probably more efficient than a humanoid at doing the job that you can assign to it in a battlefield, right? Now, those basically mean that jobs will be disappearing to robots before we recognize that they're disappearing to robots. And those robots will be as many as every car being made today.
I mean, they are. If you go to LA, my car drives itself, but also there's just Waymos everywhere. So
absolutely. Yeah. And BYD the other day just announced that they will pay for the liability of any accident their cars will make.
And BYD is the big Chinese manufacturer of autonomous vehicles.
So this I think replacement cycle will happen. It will require a lot of time to achieve economies of scale, but I don't think Elon Musk is off the mark when he talks about 10 billion robots. Not all of them are going to look like humanoids. And I think very quickly we will recognize that many robots don't need to be humanoids at all, that there is a much more efficient form factor or shape, physical shape if you want, than the human flimsy structure. But yes, it's about to happen. I think I should qualify all of this by saying it does not necessarily need to happen. So people will hear all of this and blame AI and say AI is evil. AI is not. Abundant intelligence is wonderful. Having jobs done by machines is amazing for us.
I'm thinking about the kid that's leaving university now, and they've got a degree in law, or I don't know, you talked about a few other white collar jobs earlier, like graphic design, or maybe they did sociology.
Yeah.
Or maybe they did, I don't know, business management, like I did for one day in university. You're hearing about all these layoffs coming from big tech companies, and it seems that the CEOs of these companies are announcing these layoffs with a certain amount of, it seems like, I wouldn't say the word is joy, but it's they are very keen to explain that they're laying off lots of people because of AI. And I think they think that gives them a certain amount of respect, probably from investors, for making hard decisions and being efficient with how they're running their businesses. Investors look at them and think, well, if that's an efficient business and they're leaning into AI, then that's a good investment. It's almost started a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, where if you're the only CEO not laying off loads of people because of AI, you actually look bad. The assumption is your company is bloated and you're a bad operator. So one of my concerns that I think is highly plausible is that over the next 5, maybe 10 years, we're going to really see a lot of unemployment as the world has to kind of readjust to whatever these new jobs are. I do think there will be new jobs. It's hard in foresight to predict what those new jobs will look like. And then the minute you start talking about humanoid robots and robotics, which I think is basically going to hit society like a comet, like a meteor. I think the first humanoid robot from Tesla or anyone else that is highly effective in the real world at doing tasks and is extremely intelligent because it's powered by one of these LLMs, I think it's going to shock people. And I think it's going to happen quickly. Like ChatGPT happened quickly.
100%.
I think Elon or something is going to do a presentation someday and say, we're ready.
100%.
And you can buy one now for $500 a month.
100%.
And then people are going to get them, and I think it's going to shock the world. But until humanoid robots arrive, I think there's still going to be a lot of job disruption to the white-collar layer. And I wonder what that looks like for society when we get to, 10%, 15% unemployment, theoretically, which I think is plausible.
Very soon, yeah. You're not very different, okay? You're just on top of a baseline that is continuing to grow. So your business is growing, so you continue to hire, but you are replacing human resources with compute. Okay, if AI didn't exist, you would have probably had 100 people more in your organization today, right? You now have 100 people less, and 1 billion tokens more.
Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know, tokens are basically the thing that you use. It's the currency of AI.
Yeah. So if you want to get a task done by a human, you count in sort of like man hour or worker hour, employee hour. In AI, you count by compute. You count by tokens. Right? And so the trick is those major tech companies, they have two sides. One is they need to replace workers with compute even more because there is a competitive side on compute where if any of them is left behind, that means the destruction of the entire business. But on the upside, they are geeks, so they know how to build the interfaces to compute, so they integrate technology within their organizations quicker than the average traditional business, right? Non-technology business, if you want. You can look at them and say, this is the preview. It's not about all of humanity losing their jobs. It's about what is the dividing line before civil war, right? Think about a situation where 20% unemployment is happening when economies are suffering inflation. I say that not to be a scaremonger. I say that because I genuinely believe governments need to wake up. Okay, government needs to at least, remember the COVID years where governments had to give furlough everywhere and ask people to stay home. If people stay home, governments have to be prepared to somehow sustain those people until reskilling happens or until we find a solution so that those people don't feel that they're left behind.
A civil war.
Unrest, let's call it.
Civil unrest.
Yeah.
What does that end up looking like? Because on one end, the democratic process plays its role and we just elect someone else.
Does it really? Don't say that.
I don't know. You tell me.
Oh, no. I think democracy has ended a long time ago, Stephen. I think we live in the most corrupt time. I don't know about history, to be honest, but this is definitely corrupt. Okay? This definitely is not democracy. This definitely is not even congressional in any possible way. And people are angry. People are angry because their tax money is going to things that they don't choose to, that don't benefit them, that, lots of regulations in the system are being ignored. I mean, I choose not to speak about politics perhaps until my next book comes out, but look, we have video evidence of people abusing children and not a single person got arrested. Not a single person. I mean, how can you call that a democracy? I think repeating those slogans is gonna anger people even more, if you ask me. People know that they're being lied to. People know that their leaders are not representing their best interests. People know that their money is going to causes that they don't really approve of. And ask me how civil unrest looks like. I don't know, and I'm not calling for it, but I'm hopefully calling for the politicians to start to become aware that this is crossing the lines everywhere.
On this point, Sam Altman, who is the founder of OpenAI, he's been banging the AI is coming for your job drum for more than a decade now. In 2015, he pointed out, my job is to help people destroy jobs. Something he lamented at the time, but decided he'd do anyway.
One of the things that I struggle with, getting out of the bed every morning, is that my job is to help people destroy jobs. The job destruction that we're going to see by software in the next couple of decades, I don't think anyone's prepared for, and you can't talk about it.
And in 2023, Altman said in an interview, a lot of people working on AI pretend that it's only going to be good. It's only going to be a supplement. No one is ever going to be replaced. Jobs are definitely going to go away, full stop. Interestingly, this month, he said, I don't think we're going to have the kind of jobs apocalypse that some of the companies in our space advocate or talk about. I'm delighted to be wrong about this. On white-collar jobs in 2021 through 2024, he said, AI will probably replace most of the jobs people do today. Entire job categories will be totally gone. In May, this month, 2 years later, he said, I thought there would be more impact on entry-level white-collar jobs being eliminated by now than has actually happened. This is an area where my intuitions were just off. What I find uncomfortable is the bouncing backwards and forwards. And I don't really know what is true, because a couple of years ago, you were telling us all the jobs are going to go away. You said categorically. You literally said full stop. And now he's saying they're not going away. And I just don't, when someone's like changing form factor, it's hard to understand why they're doing it. And I think my suspicion is back then, the incentive was to get people to take AI seriously. Congratulations, we took it seriously. We took it so seriously, in fact, that it's now a problem. It's a problem for these companies because people are now booing at commencement speeches. They're attacking data centers. They're going to elect people that are theoretically anti-AI. And now there's this inversion where like, no, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're spot on. First of all, Sam's entire existence, if you ask me, starting with open AI that's supposed to save the world by creating a safe AI, then making it a commercial enterprise that's worth billions, and backstabbing a few people in the process. And I have him on Chasing Utopia saying, I quote, this is exactly the words he said, you can find it online.
Chasing Utopia is your documentary.
Yes. So he basically says, well, I don't suspect that, I suspect that AI is likely going to end humanity, but we're going to create a lot of interesting companies in the process, right? Those kinds of statements are honestly not the statements of someone who's not decided. It's just the statements of someone who's being taught more and more by his PR agency or PR manager to say things as per a script, right? And the script, as you rightly said, had an objective and a target either way. And Sam Altman, in one of my works, I used to say the Altman is a brand, it's not a name. Okay, if it wasn't for Sam Altman specifically, there would have been another, Silicon Valley disruptor that would have done the same. I don't blame him for beating the market for it. The interesting challenge here is that who do we believe anymore? Who do we believe in technology? Who do we believe in politics? Who do we believe in the middle of a war? And I will tell you, interestingly, I started to change my mindset in terms of believing those who put their actions where their words are. So Anthropic coming out and saying, I'm not going to allow my model to be used for human targeting and surveillance, right? That's someone that's losing a $500 million deal because they stand by their ethics. The next week or the next, couple of weeks, OpenAI takes the contract. That's someone that's basically telling you it's good money, right? And I have to say, you have to start observing who's actually behaving in a way that is making AI work for humanity and who is behaving in a way that is making AI work for their shared values.
Yeah, I do have to say, when Dario and the team at Anthropic did that, I did have a huge amount of respect for them. Generally because it just shows that there's some kind of they've got their own sort of moral, ethical boundaries. And someone asked me on stage many years ago, how do you know if someone's values or a company's values are true? And I said, look at what they're willing to sacrifice in the near term that's against their incentives.
Correct.
That for me is the essence of understanding if someone has integrity or is principled, is they will give up something in the near term for what they believe in over the long term. It's usually money,
or some kind of benefit of any sort. So there is something that you needed to have worked on the inside of Google like me to realize. There are prisoner's dilemmas within technology where you cannot escape the influence of either a competitor or the government, right? There are some times where, the NSA is gonna push Google to say, give me this information or otherwise I'm gonna really destroy your business, right? But there is a very big difference between a company that willingly does this and celebrates it like a Palantir or an OpenAI, or a company that tries to resist it until the point where it becomes impossible to continue to do business. And you have to question from the actions of the tech bros who is pro.
In the football career, you go through a lot ups and downs and a lot of difficult moments. And let's say the ones that suffered most are family. They see your good moments, your bad moments, your good side, your bad side also, but they always stand by you.
Your time at Manchester United has been a bit of a roller coaster like this. And so on that day when you get a big offer to leave Manchester United for a contract that was worth reportedly 200 million, why didn't you go? Manchester United's captain, Bruno Fernandes, has arguably become their greatest player in the post-Ferguson era. There isn't a single player in the Premier League who has more assists since his arrival. He's won more Club Player of the Year awards than Ronaldo, and only 5 players have scored more than his 70 league goals. So I'm at the Manchester United training ground to ask him the questions the footballing world wants to know, including, recently Roy Keane criticised your mentality based on a quote he claimed you said. How do you respond to that?
He came criticizing me, killing me, say that I'm not good enough, that I'm not a good captain, that I'm not a good player for the club. It's okay, I don't mind. What I don't like was when people lie about things. I even asked Ole his number to have a word with him.
Did you speak to him? Recently, Roy Keane criticised your mentality based on a quote he got completely backwards. He claimed you said, "I should have shot, but I made the passes," and used that to suggest that you were chasing individual assist stats. But everyone who actually listened to the interview, including myself, knows you said almost the exact opposite. You were being self-critical of yourself and saying you should have passed the ball instead of shot because you wanted the best for your team. How do you respond to that? Like, how do you deal with that when you hear it and you go, that's not what I said?
Yeah, to be honest, like I've always said, I don't mind criticism. I've always taken criticism from everyone and anyone, and I never replied to anything or whatsoever. People have an opinion, they think it's good, bad, whatever. What I don't like was when people lie about things, and this case that you said about Roy Keane, basically what he said is a lie. And luckily for me, is everything on record. Imagine if he wasn't, like, then people will think like, oh yeah, Bruno is the guy always trying to got the assist. I even asked Ole his number to text him, to be honest, to have a word with him, to say like, that I don't mind the criticism. I don't like when people lie about things that I say, because this is like, goes a little bit over the top of the things that I think are acceptable.
You got a very, very, very large financial offer. I mean, I've seen some of the numbers that are reported, up to 200 million to leave Manchester United, and you chose not to leave. Why didn't you go?
I said it before, I haven't fulfilled my dreams here, at this club.
Was that a conversation you had with your wife?
Yeah, also.
What was that conversation?
I spoke, obviously, first my agent, because he speaks with me about the offer, but then the first thing I did was call her. And I was in, I think it was Hong Kong that we were. Like we went on the post-season tour, and the timing was not the best to talk with her because of the time difference and everything. But she was there again. And what the words she said was like, have you achieved everything you wanted to achieve in your career? Is this the next step you want to give for your future, for your career? Like, because obviously this is the league I want to be, this is the best league in the world, this is where I'm gonna enjoy my football as I'm not gonna enjoy it in any other place. So we still have dreams to fulfill.
Why does that make you emotional?
I don't know. Talking about family, it's tough. Just because in the football career you go through a lot ups and downs and a lot of difficult moments. And let's say the ones that suffered most of them, because they see your good moments, your bad moments, your good things, your bad things, your good side, your bad side also. But they always stand by you, so that's the most important thing you can have in life.